Hi. Hi, Jessie.
Going. Hi, Alba.
Great. And you? How are you doing?
Yeah, all right. I love how you have your No Me Da La Vida branding in the background. I just noticed it
Thank you.
again, and it's under the SNE logo. So, like, that's podcast inception.
Yeah, that's true. Probably we need also one from Maseni, so it would be more much. Yeah.
No, that's not what I meant, but I like the
Yeah, no, but
idea.
still, yeah, I'm really branded. I know that. I need to remove a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. And the Christmas stuff is in the background, and once a year,
Yeah.
it's actually in time. So.
Yeah, finally is the time to have this in the
It's
podcast indeed.
amazing. I love it. No, that's really
Well,
cool.
before we get our guest into the stream, we want to say that this is, as any podcast, one episode per 2 weeks, but this time it got really messy and we had one per week. Sorry about that. It's okay. And we will get to the business years probably.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to say that this is a podcast that welcomes everyone. We try to talk about tech, but we usually talk about things we are excited about. It can be tech related, maybe it can be career development, whatever, but it shouldn't be only focused on one topic. We just want to create an environment and a community where people can feel involved and able to speak. And that's why we created this podcast. With the three of us, Arisa is missing today, but she will be joining probably other episodes. And yeah, and for today, we have a really nice guest and a really cool topic. We have Estela Franco, also called Waka in social media, and she's an expert on technical SEO and also web performance. I will say that every conference that you know about web performance, there is not so many, but the few we know, she is always involved as an attendee or as a speaker or as an organizer. So you will know her if you are touching the web performance topic at all. And if you are in the Spanish community, probably you know her better even because she's living in Barcelona. So yeah, let's welcome Estela to the show. Hi,
Hello,
Estela.
hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here today in this amazing podcast, bringing some tech stuff for the community. So, yeah, I'm really
Nice.
excited.
Yeah, that's
So happy to
amazing.
have you.
Yeah. Alba was already doing a little introduction about you, but is there anything maybe we were missing, anything that you want to add that folks should know about you?
I loved her introduction, to be honest. I feel like amazed. No, I think she described that well. I have this kind of mixed skills about technical SEO and web performance, and I try to be connected to the community. Lately, more connected to the web perf stuff, as Alba was describing. But yeah, also with the tech SEO, and especially in Spain, I'm also, let's say, co-hosting a community that we have, which is called Mujeres en SEO, Women in SEO for Spanish-speaking women in the industry. So yeah, I try to contribute as much as I can to these two areas.
That's amazing. And how did you get started? What was your first steps in the tech industry? How did you find out this is interesting to you?
Okay, that's a really good question, and we need to go back in time a while. No, I will try to summarize because we just have 1 hour. So actually, I've always been kind of a techie girl. I had my first computer in the late 80s, so a while ago, most about, video games and so on. But actually, I learned programming when I was in school, since I was like 8 years old or something like that.
My God.
So I love that. It's like you can create things just by writing some lines of code. At that time, I mean, we were just doing really simple things, but this kind of thinking was like, whoa, amazing. Then moving on, I tried to study telecommunications. I never did it. Alba knows that. I'm really happy that she did it, but I wasn't able to finish that. So it's like, okay, then I tried to survive, let's say. I've had a lot of many different works in my career before moving to the tech industry. And then I had the opportunity to rebuild myself. So then at that time, we are talking about 2010, more or less, I decided that I wanted to, in some way, to go to the digital side again, kind of, because I was just practicing that before that. So I did a kind of digital marketing master, which showed me like a lot of different things. And at that point, I discovered SEO. is like, look at this. I can check HTML. I can see some technical stuff. It's not just about sending emails or paging for keywords and so on. It's like, I like this stuff. So then I had the opportunity to start at a really small agency here in Barcelona. And at that time I was doing like everything. But then after that, I had the huge opportunity to join a kind of Airbnb company here in Barcelona at that time, just to focus on SEO. And that was like, wow, that was great, because my manager, he was super technical. So I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed that, to be able to discover a lot of technical things, to be more professional on HTML, and because I had really basic knowledge. So that was like my first point to get into this. And after that, a lot of things happened.
And the rest is history. No, but that's amazing that you were exposed so early to this technical way of thinking. I think that really like plants a seed in the little brain, and it helps you so much approach everything that you encounter. And I think that's so interesting, because that gives you also the confidence to figure out like, hey, I can poke around here even though I maybe didn't do it for the last couple of years. And I think that's so important, and so cool that you were already doing this when you were 8 years old. Oh my God.
I feel I'm really lucky, because I mean, this is not the commonest scenario, the common case scenario that we have in Spain or in Barcelona. It was because we had a teacher in my school that was really good on programming, and she wanted to keep us involved. And I feel really happy and very lucky for that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember in high school, I was just checking Excel or doing things with this programmatically way of having boxes that you add a box and then does some operation, but not seeing the real code. Didn't even know about it till I joined the degree. That was really bad, because I started literally a degree on things related to programming without knowing what was code at all.
Different points of a start, but it's cool.
Yeah, that's very brave, I would say. But again, I mean,
I thought I will just use cameras when I join the degree, if I'm honest.
I mean,
but we are here today all together.
With a camera.
Yeah.
Indeed, there is a camera involved, but I don't know anymore how it works.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, but I mean, I've made more stupid decisions at that age, so I'm not gonna judge you. No, but that's really, really cool. And these days you work as a full-time expert on these topics, right? So what does like a typical day for you look like? How?
Okay.
What do you do?
How this works?
Yeah.
I have a lot of meetings. I can summarize that way. I have a lot of meetings.
We can relate to that now.
Focusing on the technical side, because now I'm managing actually 3 areas, but I'm more focused on 2 of them, because for the third one, I have really experts working on that. I'm managing technical SEO, web performance, and accessibility. I have a great expert for the accessibility part, because I'm quite newbie to the topic. But yeah, for the technical SEO and the web performance stuff, I'm leading these areas. So basically, my responsibilities is to ensure that our public website is following the best practices, to ensure that we have good web performance in terms of core web vitals, because currently it's like the current, let's say, standard in the industry to measure how web performance is going. And for the technical SEO part, I know that this is probably a question that you may have. What's technical SEO? Because depending on who you ask this question, they will answer one thing or another. So I will answer with my definition of that and the responsibilities that I have at my current company, Schneider Electric. I'm focusing on the technical aspects of the public website to ensure that the pages are crawlable and indexable by search engines, especially Google. So I must ensure that the code that we are using, Google can crawl the links, can crawl the page content, and can index that. Because now, especially nowadays with the modern frameworks that many companies and many teams use, we rely a lot on JavaScript to render content. So sometimes it's quite complicated to ensure that Google is able to read and index this content. So yeah, it's more about that, to check that everything is under control and that we can have good core web vitals and good indexation.
But that's interesting. So you're right. Of course, this would have been one of our next questions. But what would other people say? So if you're saying like this is your definition, and how like could we contrast this with, because this would have been what came to my mind as well. And so I'm really curious what other approaches would there be?
Yes, in my experience, when you talk about technical SEO, one of the main problems is that it's kind of hard to define the scope, because generally speaking, in most of the companies that I know and many colleagues that I have, you work on SEO. So you manage everything. So you don't really draw the lines that set the scope of every area that is involved in SEO. I used to describe that SEO like 3 different areas: on page, off page, and technical SEO. So the lines between on page and technical SEO can be very blurry. And in my case, because I work on a large, huge company, so it's not easier, but it's more, I don't know how to say that, but it's easier that we have different folks, different teams focusing on different aspects. But that's not generally speaking the case. So depending on who you ask this question, they will answer that on page and technical SEO are more or less the same, but because they work on both together. And what's on page SEO? Maybe it's the next question. Good. That's a really good question. Because on page SEO, to keep it simple, it's all you can do on your website but it combines two things. All the things that you can do to ensure that you will have better indexation or ranking results. So let's say the technical SEO, I scope that as I mentioned, crawling, rendering, indexing, to ensure that all these 3 areas are okay. And then on page SEO is more related to the keywords, the content, the internal linking strategies that you are applying to ensure that the important pages are well linked, and because the better the linking, Google understands that the page is better for the related queries and so on. So there are some gray areas, but I try to keep the technical SEO completely agnostic to keywords or these kind of things.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like the on page, the keyboard, the keywords, and the linking and stuff, that was something that I was supposed to do in my student job, but I was in the marketing department, and we were doing this for clients to like improve their ranking and everything. And so I'm curious, your side of things is of course more technical. So how are these roles usually located? Is that ever a case that it's in the marketing department also, or how's that divided?
The on-page SEO tends to be tied to the marketing team, because the marketing teams tend to, let's say, lead the strategy, the important things that you want to be as a brand. You want to be known for these different things, right? So this is more led by the marketing teams. The technical SEO side, it depends, because generally speaking, as I was saying, you will have an SEO team managing everything. Most of the times you will find that the technical SEO checks or definitions will also come from the marketing team. But for example, in my case, I'm part of the Schneider Digital, so it's kind of the technical team, let's say, but not specifically marketing. But one cool thing that we have is that we always work together with the business and marketing side. So we are like, okay, I'm managing the technical SEO, but I have like a how we call that? We have like a counterpart in the business side, in the domain side. So in this case, I'm also working closely with the global SEO team, that we call them, that they are managing all this strategy and keywords and contents and so on. So we are completely aligned to ensure that we know what we are doing on every single part, to ensure that if we see some improvements here or there, we know where they are coming from.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess it's also, again, a bit different in all the different companies, how they set up their internal structures, but it's really good to know. And especially if the company is larger, of course, it makes a lot of sense to like stay closely aligned on these topics.
Sorry. Yes, the larger the company, I mean, it makes more sense to have this separately, because if not, it's like a chaos.
Yeah, sorry, there was no real question. I was trying to give Alba some room because I feel like I'm monopolizing.
Yeah, and I was
watching the show.
I was just thinking. That's the problem. Because actually, some time ago, I did. I think 4 years ago or so, I did like a talk on Let's SEO Be With You. I call it, with Nax, and now I realize I was only speaking about technical SEO, but I didn't know there was a term for that, because I was saying SEO as the thing developers should do and not as a content creator should do. So I was only explaining the technical part, but explaining that is the clue for SEO, but actually keywords and so on were ignored. You know what I mean? Like,
And
all
it's an
the
important
content
part of the
exactly. Because at the end, I thought, well, my blog is something I'm creating because I know there is a problem and I want to solve that problem. So the article I will create, the content, let's say, it should be already good, because it's what I was looking for, no? So I didn't thought about the content at all. And I was like,
but
this
your
is
audience,
SEO.
I mean, your audience was technical, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But that's the funny thing. Like, in technical side, probably we call SEO the technical stuff from the SEO. And in marketing side, they thought about the content and keywords, isn't it? So it's like,
probably
you have both mentalities in you. So it's like connecting all the dots. I love it.
Indeed.
Yeah, but it's such a massive field that it feels like there's you kept explaining the different areas, and you were always saying, okay, there's two parts, and I feel like in my mind I'm already drawing like a little diagram of like how to break it down, because it feels like there's many layers to it. But that's really interesting. So what would you say is like the biggest misconception about technical SEO?
A lot of people, when thinking about technical SEO, they think about on-page SEO. So they are focusing on the title tags and the meta descriptions and the H1 tags. And it's like, yeah, we need them. I mean, we need a title tag with content. We need, well, the meta description is something that we can discuss, because Google is not always showing that. When you search for something, you have like the title, and then you have the link, and then you have like a brief piece of text. In the past, that text always used to be the meta description, but nowadays it tends to be something that is more related to your query, and it's part of your page. So meta description is something that Google may use or not, but it's also important to put that as a kind of fallback. And then also, yes, we need an H1 that helps a lot Google to understand the content of your page, right? But from a technical point of view, I don't care about the content. I need the tags to exist. And then I need people in the marketing side validating that the content is correct. So I think that that's one of the main misconceptions. Like, yes, I do technical SEO. No, you are doing on-page SEO, because you are more focused about the keyword strategy and duplicity of content or whatever. But that's not exactly technical SEO. But there are some gray zones as well. So it's easy to have some doubt many times.
That's interesting. Daniel is asking, is the sitemap still important today?
That's a really good question. I would say it depends. If you have a small site and all your pages are well linked, Google and other search engines are able to discover your pages just by navigating your web page. You don't need a sitemap. The problem comes when you have a huge website. We are talking more than, 100,000 URLs. And probably not all of them are discoverable just by crawling your website. Then in that case, yes, having a sitemap is super important to let Google know all your URLs.
Okay. Makes sense.
But also, sitemaps are hints. We are suggesting Google to crawl this, but don't rely just on sitemaps. Like, okay, I have the sitemaps, then I'm okay. It's always good to have good, as much as possible, good linking in your website to ensure that Google and other search engines can discover as much as possible through links.
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting, because when I started my website, I remember that I didn't saw the result as I expected. Like, I tried to make all this technical SEO, but the results weren't as I believe in my brain. So I went to Search Console and I realized there were some problems there, and when I index it there, then they start appearing, because Nav has a problem with the sitemap and generates slashes at the end. I don't know what happened, but all of them were messed up. And when I went to Search Console, I realized maybe I just to index myself when I want them. You know what I mean? And if I posted in, I think it was Twitter, because the API, or at least the platform, was exposing the tweets in Google, I remember that if I tweet, I put the link, and then someone popular like Netlify retweeted, it was indexed immediately. And I was like, whoa, I just break the internet. I was so happy about that.
Yes, yes, yeah. Having links here and there can help Google to discover and index pages. That's one thing. And then what you mentioned, that the sitemaps issues with maybe the trailing slash with or without. I've seen this with some frameworks, like maybe you have the URLs without the trailing slash, but they are actually redirecting to the same version with trailing slash. So that's kind of a mess. And that's one of the current common issues that we may face on the technical SEO side. Because apart from that, I will tell you, there's an SEO HTML tag that it's called the link rel canonical. This tag tells the search engines what's the indexable version of the page, because maybe you have duplicate pages because you have a campaign and you have something very similar, the content is more or less the same, and you don't want that content to compete with your good URL. You use that URL to make sure that you only have one version indexable. And that's also important because that will prevent search engines from indexing. For example, when you share something on social media will add query parameters, right? The UTMs or these kind of things. So if you don't use the canonical, all those versions may be indexable. So what happens with some of these frameworks that I've seen in the past, that sometimes you have the URL, the visible URL, the actual URL with the trailing slash, but the canonical is without the trailing slash. But the version without the trailing slash is redirecting to the trailing slash. So that causes a lot of confusion for some search engines. So it's better to ensure that you are always having one version everywhere. The URL, the actual URL that you can visit, and the URLs that are in your sitemap should be the same, and that should be indexable.
So attention to detail is crucial. I'm gathering from.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. No, but that's really, really interesting. And sorry, I have so many questions because I feel.
Please go ahead.
So you were saying in the beginning, like you're mainly focusing on making the pages crawlable for Google, right? Have you ever had a case where you were also paying attention to other search engines?
Because of the markets that I'm targeting are more visited by Google, I'm more focusing on that. But yeah, it's true that depending on your markets, maybe you have to pay attention to others. For example, I know that Bing is gaining some market share in the US, for example. It's still far from Google, but it's also important to understand that, because not all the search engines are able to handle JavaScript as Google. Because you know that rendering JavaScript is very expensive. So if you have to do that for trillions of pages, that's super expensive. Google does that. They execute all the JavaScript and they render the content after executing JavaScript, even if the page is not relying on JavaScript to render content. But they are doing that. But other search engines are not as good. For example, Bing, they are able to do something, but they say in their documentation that they are not really good on that at a scale. So they suggest that maybe you don't need to rely a lot on JavaScript, just in case you need that. And I've seen in my case many cases where I can't see the JavaScript generated content indexed on Bing. And then there are other, it depends. If you are targeting Russia, you will focus on Yandex. If you are focusing on China, then you need to focus on Baidu. So there are different search engines, and generally speaking, not all of them will handle that as good as Google. So it's also something that sometimes you need to try, read documentation and so on. And sometimes you need a workaround, like having some kind of pre-rendered stuff for those markets to ensure that the search engines can actually render the content for those markets.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, the less JavaScript, the better.
That's also for performance a good answer.
Love that. All interconnected.
And is it, maybe that's our segue to performance, I guess, but is it safe to say that web performance becomes more and more important, like for businesses, because just our attention span is also smaller, maybe?
Yeah.
Or just, is it increased, or is it just my bubble where this buzzword is just like circulating all the time?
Okay, again, I will say it depends. I will repeat that a lot, sorry. No, because for example, I know that probably you know that Google is using the core web vitals as one of the ranking factors for ranking better on Google results, but they have said that many times that it's not like the most important or a huge signal. It's something that in some cases can make the difference, but in my opinion, working on web performance is something that you should do to ensure that you are providing a better user experience to your users. Because there are a lot of studies also published by many large companies explaining that improving the loading process, improving the LCP, improving depending which metrics, that increased the revenue or the page views or depending the metrics that you are targeting. So there's a real impact when improving, in this case, core web vitals, but generally speaking, web performance can impact your business and can produce a better user experience, which is, I think that all the companies want to provide a better user experience, right?
Indeed. Really
Actually,
love that way of explaining.
I will recommend a web page which is called WPO Stats. I can't remember if it's .com or not, but WPO Stats, because they are gathering all the publicly known studies, case studies from companies sharing their results. Like, I don't know, X company improved by 100 milliseconds the LCP, and that increased the revenue or the conversion rate by whatever. They are gathering all these public studies, and you have all of them in that website, which is amazing because, yeah, thank you, it's .com. I can see that in the chat. So it's a great, I don't know how to say justification, but that's something that you can also share internally if you are trying to push in that direction. Like, okay, maybe we won't see like the huge increase in SEO results, but keep in mind that we can also impact other business metrics improving this.
But
yeah,
this
really
is
interesting.
Yeah, that's really good to know, because I imagine similar to, so I work in accessibility, and one thing that I'm always struggling is getting people on board and actually like prioritizing working on accessibility. And so if you have a task like this and you can say, hey, we can prove like this is the result of that, and it brought the company a lot of money, that's really great. So that's really cool. We need that for accessibility.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Maybe, I don't know if the companies are publicly sharing these kind of findings, because for web performance, many of them, as you can see in this website that I suggested, many companies are publicly saying that. So, and not only that, I can't remember exactly which one was also sharing that making the website a bit slower also decreased the business KPIs. So there's a direct correlation. And yes, having this kind of support, I think it's something interesting and important for us to have like this wild card, like, hey, you don't want to do that, but keep in mind that this can help because look at this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely articles and research on the return of investment on accessibility. But as far as I know, there are no like big global places where all of this comes together to compare, because of course the laws are different everywhere. And then it's very nuanced and very new and doesn't generate that much revenue, unfortunately. So like, I'm not sure, but if there is such thing, I would be very excited to see it for sure.
You can create one if you are able to gather this kind of information, because actually WPO Stats is managed by two guys of the community, Tammy and Tim. They are gathering all this information and publishing this here. So it's people of the web performance community who is maintaining that.
Yeah,
You write an article there? Or did you appear in that place?
No, that's a different place. That's a different place. Yeah, you're talking about the perf calendar, probably.
Okay. I always confuse that. Yeah, because I thought it was also, but you didn't do like a case study at some point? I'm messing things up because I don't know why I remember your company having one, but maybe it wasn't related to this. And
actually, I shared some improvements that we did at my company a couple of years ago. or a year ago. I don't know. The time passes too fast. Because last year I was a speaker at the PerfNow conference in Amsterdam, and I shared a lot of things. And one of the things that I shared is also the impact that we made with one implementation that we did at my company. So there's a slide somewhere about that, but that's the only kind of case study that I published from my company.
So all the content from Estela, I'm really messing up.
I'm everywhere.
Yeah. I love
it. Oh, that's really cool. And it's so cool if you also have a community there where you kind of know people, and then you can travel to conferences, but it's small enough so that you kind of know who's behind a certain project for some. I think that's really great, and sometimes more fruitful than the massive communities, because it's a bit more personal and you know people. But it's just my
Yes. Actually, I participate in a web performance community through Slack. There's a community for that, and a lot of people there, and they are sharing their questions and their findings and so on. So you are learning a lot from the community, which is amazing.
It's really cool. When you go to a web performance conference, it seems that everyone is trying to captivate you. It's like, please come to web performance and stay, But I love it. It's so welcoming, and people are amazing. And I can see, I don't know, different profiles of people. It's not like when I go to a JavaScript conference, we have so much in common. It's like sometimes I want different people so I can enjoy different things of life, And when I go to this web performance conference, there is so many profiles in really different topics and ecosystems. There's more, I like it more, if I'm honest.
You know it. You should join us. Come to the dark side.
You see? Capturing them all.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice.
Love it.
Daniel's asking another question in the chat. What does your tool belt look like for checking correct linking and everything? And that's actually a question we also had. Like, what kind of tooling do you use to improve both technical SEO but also web performance?
To check what, sorry, both SEO and web performance? Okay, for web performance, there are a lot of great tools in the market. Well, first, you have Chrome DevTools, which is amazing. They have been working on improving many, many things in the last few months and years. So it's amazing the level of detail that you can debug through Google Search Console in terms of web performance. So that's amazing. But sometimes you need something more visual, and not only that, you sometimes need to monitor the progress of different things. So in web performance, we work with two different types of data. Lab data, which is the lab, it's like something that you are making in the lab. So you can have, as I was mentioning, Chrome DevTools, but then you have Lighthouse as well. You can run that directly from Chrome DevTools, or you can run that directly from PageSpeed Insights, which is a website. And that will show you different issues or opportunities that you have to improve different metrics. And then you have a lot of, again, tools in the market that will offer you this kind of tests. And then you also have field data. So data coming from your real users. So again, there are also a lot of different tools in the market to do that. You can even create your own one, because there's an open source library, which is called Web Vitals.js, maintained by Google. So you can collect your data, the data from your users directly through this code, and then you can send that to Google Analytics or any database that you want to store that, so you can check the actual metrics that your real users are experiencing, because that's also something important. Sometimes you will find that the RAM data, real user monitoring data, and lab data can be very different, because it depends a lot on when you are testing through Chrome DevTools or Lighthouse or PageSpeed Insights, you are setting a specific environment. So that means that you are emulating a specific network connection, a specific device with the X memory and so on, right? So maybe your real users will have better or worse conditions. So depending on that, you will find that the data can be very different. So to try to sum up, when working on web performance, it's very important to have real user data, because you need to fix or you need to improve what your real users are facing. It doesn't make any sense to improve something just because Lighthouse is telling you that this is an issue if your real users are not facing any issues with that. So combining these two types of data is important. For RAM data, again, there are a lot, apart from Web Vitals, there's a lot of options. You have Akamai, they have Impulse, you have New Relic, you have Datadog, you have RAM Vision, you have Debug Bear. There are a lot of tools in the market that you can use to collect data from real users. And some of these tools are also offering you lab data. So you can onboard URLs to the systems and they will crawl those pages on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever you want. So you can see the evolution in the lab of those. For example, if you are releasing something, so you have like a more stable environment where you can check how your code is actually impacting the, let's say, potential results. But again, you need to combine that with the real user data to really see the impact. So it's complex, but it's cool because I love data. So I enjoy that a lot. And then for technical SEO, it's complicated because I would say that currently the best tool that you may have is Screaming Frog. We have a lot of animals in this industry, Debug Bear, Screaming Frog. Yeah, we love that. Screaming Frog is like a really well-known tool in the SEO industry because it allows you to crawl pages and collect a lot of SEO on-page SEO stuff like titles, descriptions, and links and whatever. But they also allow you to crawl rendered JavaScript content, JavaScript generated content. So you are able to really understand if you have any, because you can go one by one and see what's actually in the DOM. You can extract the DOM from the page once the JavaScript is executed and so on. So you can confirm if the content is there or not because you can emulate the Google search user agent. So you will receive the same responses as Google should. So that's also something cool. Apart from that, probably there are more tools in the market that can help you with that. But I think that Screaming Frog is like one of the most known in the industry.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I remember using it for a company in the past. Well, the marketing team was using it, and I tried to use it one day, and it's like, this is so cryptic. Like, I didn't know my way around. Like, the platform was really, well, probably it was almost 7 years ago or something like that, but still, it looked like going to Estela for the first time. Like, really. If you know how to use it, it's really powerful, but if you don't, you are lost all the time. I felt that way in that platform. Like,
I was just checking the chat that Daniel is asking about checking if every page is reachable. And yeah, Screaming Frog does that. You can put the home page of a page and it will crawl like a crawler, jumping from one link to another. So you will have an entire view of all the pages that are crawlable in your website. And you can compare that to the pages that you know that you have. Because maybe you have more than that, because as I was mentioning, especially when you have huge websites, probably you will have many pages that are not linked anywhere. So they are orphan pages, and you can also have that report with the Screaming Frog. It's a super powerful tool.
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And it's cool that all is condensed in one instead of having so many options, and probably they can focus on growing that one altogether, so they don't need to jump around with all them because one does something different and you can sometimes we need to learn so much things. Like, if I can stick with one platform, I will be happy.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you have to like find your way around first, right? Like, of course, if you have a bit more experience, it gets like easier, but still, if you have to learn a new like tool every day, then it's just time consuming. Are there any like surprising challenges that you were facing throughout your career in these fields that you did not see coming?
All of them?
Your favorite one, maybe?
Whoa, my favorite one. I would say that in general, there are a lot of developers in the industry that they are doing their best, but because they think that what they are doing is the right thing and the good practice, but that's not always the case. For example, in terms of web performance, I've seen in many cases developers that, for example, they are relying on lazy loading images that are in the initial viewport with JavaScript. So not even with the loading attribute that you can put to the images. So, but with JavaScript, because they think that having the spinner is a good practice. I think that that's because of, the frameworks that now whenever you are rendering something in the screen, you first have the rendering, the spinner hidden there. And they think that if something is being loaded, they should show a spinner in there. And it's like, no, I want the content as soon as possible. So first, one thing that you must ensure is that you are not lazy loading anything in the initial viewport. So when loading the page, you don't rely on any kind of JavaScript to delay the rendering of anything. That's something that I've seen several times. And actually, a couple of years ago, I analyzed the HTTP archive dataset to check how many LCP elements were lazy loaded. And at that time, I think it was like 18% of the websites of the dataset. Yeah, a lot. So that's something that a lot of people think that it's a good practice to lazy load all the images. And no, it's a good practice to lazy load wherever it's not in the view. So that's one thing. And for example, in terms of SEO and also related to JavaScript, I've seen sometimes that the links are not actually links. So the link is an A tag, but the href is just a hash because you are managing the navigation through JavaScript. So Google won't, and other search engines, they won't understand, they won't know what's the actual link because Google is not clicking anywhere. Google is just collecting the href attributes. So that's something quite common. And another one, my favorite one as well, instead of using A tags, people using buttons directly.
Yeah.
It's the same, but with a different tag. So it's like, no, this is not a link. and also related to accessibility, right? If it's a navigation, it should be an A link, not a button. So yeah, I think that those are some of the quite common practices that I've seen. And I guess that it's just because of a lack of the right understanding of how things work.
Yeah. And there's so many things too, because this is a conversation that comes up in accessibility a lot as well. People are doing their best or what they think is the best. And then there's so many things to focus on. Usually there's time pressure. You have to ship something fast. You don't have the time to research.
Deadlines, yeah.
Yeah, all the things. And then we just do, like all of us, I'm not excluding myself from this, right? And then you do some things that could be better because you are not aware or you don't have the time. And so, yeah, this happens, right? And these are the conversations, especially with the links that we have in the accessibility space a lot. Yeah.
And that's why I also try to be very connected with the community, and I try to, whenever I have the opportunity to share my knowledge or to share my best practices. And for example, internally at my company, when I joined the company, I tried to do several internal workshops to explain all these things because, yeah, I know that the web developer will be doing their best because they think that that's the best way to do something, or because there's a lot of JavaScript dependencies and then it's easier to do that with JavaScript because whatever. So understanding the potential impact of these things, I think it's important to also try to change their mindset and understand that, okay, it's important because if I'm doing like this, we will lose all the crawlability of the website, for example, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, but that's good. And also, like, I mean, this sharing of knowledge goes a long way, right? If you say you do this internally, you do this at conferences, and you kind of stay in touch with the community, that way you can get feedback, but people can also learn from you. And I think that's what makes this whole industry or this like community so beautiful, right? That you can actually learn stuff from people.
Yes, correct. That's also why I'm also a Google developer expert, as you are, because I'm trying to spread the word, in this case, about web performance as part of the program.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, for Google, this is a massive, massive topic, right? So they're really lucky to have you on board.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Is there any like emerging trends or anything that you're excited about or that people should look out for?
Oh, yes. In terms of web performance, this year during the Google I/O event, they presented the Speculation Rules API. This is a new browser API available for Chromium browser, so not only for Chrome, but also for Edge. And this, long story short, you add a small JSON file to your HTML code or through an HTTP header response, and you can define some rules to prefetch or pre-render pages or requests. So for example, keep in mind that this will improve internal navigations because this is something that you are loading from your web page for next navigations. But it can make your next navigations like almost instant. Because, for example, there's a way that when a user hovers a link, that page is being pre-rendered behind the scenes. So once you click it, the page is already loaded. So it's like, boom, instant. It's like almost a single page application experience, right? Without the JavaScript. So that's really cool. And there are different configurations that you can make. You can also specify the URLs that you want to prefetch or pre-render depending on the current page that the user is visiting. So you can use CSS selectors. There are a lot of ways that you can leverage this new browser API. And I think that this is really interesting because it's kind of almost for free, because you can define these rules and the browser will do everything.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Actually, Next has a way of doing that kind of thing in the framework with JavaScript, I guess. And I know they are really connected to Google. So probably once that is stable, probably Next will have that out of the box. And I don't need to worry about knowing it. But still, I will miss the point on how it is done. So probably better to start now that is not there
to
yet.
understand
Exactly.
how it works. Yeah. And actually, for example, I think it's Cloudflare, the CDN. They are also enabling that directly from the CDN side. So you don't need to add any kind of code from your side, because everything is managed from the CDN side.
My God. Now, yeah, Clover is always in the top of every improvement for performance. It's kind of, really cool. And we have Gift there, one of our friends from the community. So it's like, okay, we are all there.
Yes.
Love it. And Daniel is asking us, it is possible to increase the crawl rate of the Google bot with some sort of setting? Interesting.
Kind of. Because I will tell you one case scenario. Google loves crawling new stuff. So whenever you have like new links, new pages, whatever, that you have something new, imagine that you are changing your URLs. You shouldn't for SEO, okay? But that's something that may happen. When Google discovers like new stuff, Google goes like crazy to crawl that stuff. And that's for good and for bad. Because, for example, imagine the worst case scenario where your web page is hacked, and then they are injecting like new things in your code that you don't want and you are not aware of. You will see in the stats that Google is crawling you like crazy, but they are actually crawling the bad stuff that they injected in your website. So yes, you can increase the crawl rate, the crawl budget, let's say, that Google is spending on your website. In this case, again, when you have like a lot of new stuff and Google needs to crawl everything because they want to have everything as soon as possible.
No, have sense. I never thought about being attacked, but it's a good point. It's like you need to also take into account that they don't mess up before you know that something is happening. That's a really good point. Security is really a topic we need to talk about in another episode, Josie, because I'm seeing here so many things we can.
But apart from that, I mean, because for example, in the sitemaps, you can set like the frequency that you are modifying your pages or how important they are. Google is ignoring those rules. Don't spend time on that, because Google is crawling based on many other signals, not the things that you are putting in your settings, in your sitemaps. So don't waste time on that. Actually, if you have huge sitemaps, I would suggest to just remove those lines, the frequency and I can't remember the name, but one where you set the importance of the page. So that's not necessary. Google is focusing on the URL itself and the last modified, because that gives Google the signal like, okay, it's been updated. I need to get it as soon as possible because it has been updated. But Google is also very smart. Because, in the SEO industry, whenever we know that Google is doing something, there's someone who tries to leverage that in the bad way. So a lot of people is trying to update the pages. So the last mod tag will be updated, but they are not really modifying the content in a, let's say, significant way. So Google is also learning from that. So that's also bad practice, I would say. So if you are updating a lot your pages, it's because it's necessary and you are actually bringing more significant content. Because if not, I think that the effect will be even the opposite of the expected one.
That's really, really interesting. I remember back when I was supposed to do the on-site SEO, there was also talk of these bad practices as like black hat SEO
Oh,
or red hat
yes.
SEO. Yeah. And that felt like, I mean, I was just a student. I was like reading all these articles. I was like, okay, this sounds like the dark corner of the internet.
Yes,
Like,
the
yeah.
dangerous one.
Mhm.
I know a lot of black hat guys in the SEO industry in Spain. My suggestion is you can play with that on your personal projects. Never apply any kind of black hat technique or even gray technique to your clients or to your companies, because the potential dangerous side effects can be terrible. But if you want to play around with your personal projects, that's okay. I think it was last month, in a conference here in Catalonia, and a guy was explaining how to create 1,000 websites with AI, so no control at all, just to have these websites live and put some ads in them, so get some money for them. But it's okay, it's his side project, it's his he's trying to make money with that. So if it works, good for him, but if it doesn't work, any client will suffer. So I don't know in other countries, but in Spain there's a huge black hat community.
Okay. Yeah. It's really interesting because I always felt like, I mean, we didn't do anything like that because, again, like you said, we were working for clients, and it was really the negative implications that could have had were so scary, especially to me being a little student, not exactly sure what I was doing, that I would have never touched it. And it feels like usually in the real world, there are very few shortcuts. So usually you kind of, at least in accessibility, for example, usually you kind of have to do the work. And that's fair because we want to create a cool, good, functioning product, right? And so I feel like it's the same. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
Yeah. Yes. And the good news is that the Google search team, they have a lot of documentation, and they have like some guidelines, basic guidelines about what you need to know about how Google works, how you should work on your web page, different things that are important to take into account. They also talk about the content, the quality, and different things. So I think that it's easier for many websites or teams to be involved in this, because there's great documentation. So it's not like, I don't know, 15 years ago where everything was like a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So, people was trying to do their best to take as better results as possible. Now I think everything is more clear. And I love that the Google Search Relation team, they have a podcast, a monthly podcast, where they talk about different topics. It's called Search of the Record.
Okay.
And it's a cool podcast because they talk about a lot of different things that are important for SEO.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
Amazing, because I think
check.
I was just going to say our last question would be if you have any resources on where to get started. And you already present a list of resources. So it's like mind reading here. That's amazing.
It's good performance. I'm very fast. I'm prefetching your questions.
Prefetching. Yeah, I was going to say that. It's like she was loading already.
I love being here where these kind of jokes are valued.
I love that.
I love it so much. Is there anything else? Where can folks catch up with you? Are you going to attend any other events? Anything else you want to share before we wrap up this episode?
So no, I think I don't have any more events for the rest of the year. I had several ones the last couple or 3 months ago. So enough for this year, but I'm trying to be active on Blue Sky. I'm guaca.bska.social, and I'm trying to also be active on Mastodon. In that case, it's guacatooth.cafe. And I'm trying to quit Twitter, so don't ping me there because probably I won't answer you. And also on LinkedIn through my name, Estela Franco, you can find me.
That's amazing.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for coming. It was a blast. I could continue this conversation forever. And I'm really happy you had the time to join us. We're really grateful you came.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to you for coming.
Of course, anytime. Thank you also everybody who joined us live or who's catching up with the episode on the recording. We're SNE Podcast. And actually the next episode, we're bi-weekly, but next week will also be an episode. It's a happy accident. You can join us. It's just going to be Alba and me. We'll share the details later. And thank you everybody so much for joining. See you next week.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Have a nice
you.
day.
Bye-bye.